Yes.
Okay, well, I think we're live. It looks like we are. Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, along with Sarah.
Good day, everyone.
And we're trying out a new microphone, so hopefully this sounds good. If Sarah sounds a little quiet, she can actually scoot up a little closer to the microphone.
Trying to run over my dog.
Oh yes,
here we go.
It's a room full of cords and animals and all sorts of nonsense. So today we're going to do this painting, and the links and all the supplies I'm using, colors, brushes, and whatnot, are listed in the video description. So please check that out if you have a question on any of the supplies that I'm using. I will also mention what colors I'm using as we paint along. I have set my focus, so I don't think we're even going to have any wiggy focusing issues.
Looking good here.
Awesome. And all the supplies I'm using are from our friends at jerrysartorama.com. They're sponsoring this live show as they do every week, and I want to thank them for their support. I'm using the Turner watercolors, and this is the set of it's a basic set of 18. It's on special for $29.99, and it's professional watercolor. You get a gorgeous assortment of colors. It's a great way to try this brand of paint to see if you want to invest in larger tubes or not. So the reference photo is linked below. If you want to check that out, you can print it out so you can see it yourself. I already have it sketched on my paper, so that's going to save us a little time. And we're going to just get right into painting. I'm going to start by wetting the paper. My brush is reasonably clean. We're going to do an overall wash that's kind of unify everything, and then we're going to be building up layers on that. So it's totally suitable for a beginner. Don't try not to get too overwhelmed with details if you are new painting along with us. And this will be recorded, and anytime you need to, you can pause the live show and actually go back if you need to see something again, or watch it again later today. That's totally fine. Alright, I can see that my paper is nice and shiny, so it's evenly colored, evenly wet. And I'm going to mix up some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to get a nice kind of gray. It's a good idea to have 2 buckets of water, so you have one for your fresh water for mixes, and you have one to clean your brush off in. So there we get that nice gray. And over here, I'm actually just going to take my dirty brush and add some of that pigment. And then I'm going to grab some yellow ochre, because I know I'm going to want some of that. And I'm going to start adding some colors. Just want to have a good variety here. I'm going to go down here in the bottom of my paper and give it a little burnt sienna. Get a little bit on this board here, a little bit on this windowsill area. And then I'm going to pick up some of my mixed gray color, which was the burnt sienna plus ultramarine blue, and just adding some of that. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in all caps, and Sarah will ask me. And I am going to try to limit the duplicated questions, so if a question's already been asked, go ahead and you can check out the replay for the answer on that. Also, if there's anybody here willing to be moderators and help police the comments in this or upcoming broadcasts, then just let Sarah know, and if you're a regular, then we will add you as a moderator.
Yeah, sometimes I get behind if there's a lot of great questions, so any sort of help is great in that area because you guys are on top of it.
Yeah, we don't need Donald Trump coming back.
No, Donald Trump got blocked. Blocked.
Oh, I didn't even see what he wrote. I'm glad I didn't, but you guys were on top of it.
I don't remember. There was some cursing, some very foul language, very inappropriate.
Now I'm imagining like a window over here, so I'm just grabbing some of this ultramarine blue and just kind of knocking it back a bit with in this kind of well of color where I've mixed up some gray. I'm going to tip my paper, and this is going to be a little weird looking on the camera, but I'm tipping it and adding it up to the top, but I'm kind of using using my gravity here to help it float down.
Alright, so we've got the Art Sherpa and Kim Sim 7 have volunteered to moderate, so I've added them as moderators. They're here regularly. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much, Kim Sim 7 and Cinnamon. I'm so glad Cinnamon's in the house. That's nice.
Scott Crow. When do you prefer a mop type brush like that versus a flat brush?
I generally like to start with larger brushes at the beginning and work smaller. You could use either for this, but the thing I do like is that because it comes to like a razor sharp point, and this is the Mimic Squirrel brush from Jerry's Autorama in number 30 in size, I can actually get in with some details with this. So it just helps keep me loose and keep me from getting too wound up in the details. So here I have a little bit of my rose red or quinacridone magenta, whatever kind of cool red you have. And I've actually warmed it up with a little yellow ochre. I just had it on my palette from doing the demo yesterday, doing my practice piece. And I'm adding that in some of the rose areas. I don't want to have any real stark color here. That's why I'm putting kind of the unifying wash in. And I like to get all my colors in on this first wash if I can. And I also like to get colors into the jar because they would be reflected. Because the jars just capture light and reflect so beautifully that I like to get that. I'm using a little sap green. I love that I can see my palette and everything in this with this tutorial. Hope that's helpful for you guys.
It is. It looks good from my end.
Oh, good.
Anna Kogonower, what is the best watercolor paper to use?
It really depends on what you're doing. Like, I love arches, but I'm not going to use arches for a practice or for rubber stamping. So, totally depends on, what you're painting, what your budget is. Arches is a really great paper to paint on. It's a little pricey, so I would say for like a painting I'm really going to sit down and work a lot on and maybe do some lifting, I would go with Arches or Fabriano Artistico or Bockingford. For like just an everyday practice, I would use Strathmore 400 or I'm just grabbing a little yellow ochre here, or Canson Montville. Those are very reliable papers. You can get the same results every time, and they're not expensive. So, a couple good choices there. All right, now while this is still wet, I want to get some texture into the wood, these wood panels back here. So I'm just going to use my credit card scraper and just kind of scrape in some veining on the wood.
Eleanor Byrne, what or who inspired you to paint?
I've always loved to paint. I had a watercolor teacher when I was a child, Mrs. Turner. She was great. My parents, my mom always encouraged me to make stuff. She always had lots of craft supplies out and she let me have access to them. I used to watch Bob Ross on TV when I was a child, and I would try the stuff that he was showing because he just made it look so easy and accessible. And I would try it with my watercolors, even though he was doing acrylics. So, I think inspiration's everywhere. Now I'm inspired by, I find so many great photos that paint my photo to paint. I like to take my paints out and paint, like the scenery, around my home. Inspired by everything, I guess.
Sydney Doe, what is one brush, brand, shape, and size that you recommend to use for watercolor pencils?
Watercolor pencils, I would go with a small number 4 round. Actually, this one right here is one I was just using with watercolor pencils and I really like it. This is the Ebony Splendor. It's made by Creative Mark. Number 387 might be just like what the Ebony Splendors are, but it's a number 4 is the size. And I like it because it comes to a really fine point. It's not too absorbent, so it will just hold enough water for your watercolor pencils. You don't want something like this because it's going to have too much water and it's going to kind of wash everything out and you're going to lose a lot of your control. So I would go with something that's synthetic, that's not trying to mimic a natural hair for watercolor pencils.
Ella Grace B, how do you do your shading?
Well, there's a couple different methods, and we're going to do a few different kinds today. I'm just lifting out a little highlight here before I dry it. Sometimes I'll put in my color on dry paper, and then I'll add some water next to it and float it out. And other times I will use a flat brush and put some color on one side and paint right down with the shading part next to the object I'm painting to get the shading. So there's a couple different techniques, and we'll use a few of them today to help you out, hopefully.
Esgilova, hi, I'm going to start watercolor, so what watercolor do you prefer? Sorry, my English could be bad.
There's a lot of really good brands. If you stay in the professional line, you're going to find great paints. Like this Turner is a real bargain from Jerry's. I also like Winsor & Newton. Their cotton line is very inexpensive. It's a student grade, but it's a reliable, good quality student grade. I like M. Graham a lot. They're a little more expensive. Not as expensive as Winsor Newton Artists, but they're more than like the Turners here. Really, you know, as long as you go with the name brand, you're probably going to be all set because name brand companies usually make decent paint.
Lizette Diaz, are there any products in watercolor you would not recommend? That's a really good question.
Oh yeah, well, and you know, that's a lot of really personal preference. Like personally, I don't like to use masking fluid. Sometimes it's very useful, but for me it just adds a lot of time. It adds a bit of a learning curve. You can ruin your brushes by using it, and it's just I don't like to wait for masking fluid to dry. But I would not recommend it because for some techniques you really need that masking fluid. You need to preserve that bright white of your paper. So I guess I would maybe avoid purchasing kind of gimmicky things. Like you don't need every shape of brush out there. You need a couple nice brushes. You know, I would avoid purchasing low quality stuff just because you're not going to be happy with the results. That's a great question.
Yeah.
There aren't any. You know what? There's one product that I can absolutely not recommend purchasing because I heard so many horrible things about it. Would be the Artist Loft watercolor pencils.
Well, and Artist Loft in general, we've had people mention that they've used other Artist Loft brands and haven't been super impressed with the quality of the product.
Yeah, I haven't used because I don't. We don't have a Michaels up here, but yeah, it seems like their stuff is more geared to children or the absolute beginners. So here what I'm going to do is I've got the quinacridone red, rose red, whatever you're using for your red, and a touch of yellow ochre to kind of warm it up. And now I'm going to go in the shadow areas. Every time I do a live show, somebody calls. I'm just going to go in here and paint the shadows. So this will be one of the shading techniques that I'm going to share with you. This is a lighter rose. This rose is open, so it's going to appear much lighter than the closed rose buds. There might even be different types of roses. I'm not 100% sure on that.
One looks pinker than the closed up ones.
It does, doesn't it? But then I was just kind of wondering because the tones on the flowers are the same, even though the colors are different. So I'm going in and just putting all my shadows in at once.
Chinesia Hostetler, I have a question. When and why did you fall in love with watercolors? I want to start an art log channel and you were so inspiring. My Instagram is art.epidemic if anyone wants to check it out. If you could, that would make this 15-year-old girl's day.
Oh, that's nice. What was our question again?
When and why did you fall in love with watercolors?
Well, because my first teacher was a watercolor artist, I think is part of it, so I have the most experience with it. But as a mother, you know, your time is very much limited, and I would paint when my kids would nap, so I didn't have a ton of time, and I would try doing a pastel or doing oil painting or something, and it would take me so long to set up that I never got any painting done. And so that's kind of why I think watercolors really were a favorite. Hopefully the glare is not too bad. That'll tip my paper a little bit. I'm just kind of going next to where I've already applied color and just dragging my wet brush across. So I'm getting some highlights, I'm getting some shadows. It probably is not going to be extremely apparent until I have wet everything and it's all been dried out again. But I'm just basically wetting the petals and letting the water wick the color around. You can kind of see it a little bit more in that bottom petal there. And we'll go in and add more detail later, but this is really going to do a lot of the work. I think sometimes with watercolors we want to fuss with it too much, especially if we're enjoying ourselves painting something. We kind of want that experience to last, but you have to watch out that you don't lose the freshness of it just because you're having so much fun. A lot of times I'll have a couple paintings going because that will keep me from overworking. And there. All right, so I'm not going to want to go into that flower just yet because if I do, the paint, they're going to migrate. So I think what I'll do is mix up a little bit more intense of the red. So I'm going in with more of that quinacridone. I'm going to add a little more yellow ochre because I need to kick it down a little bit. It's a little too bright. And I'm going to paint in this petal over here.
Noah Murphy. I love everything you do, Lindsay. I've been
Yeah.
playing with watercolor for a while, and a friend of mine wants me to do a painting of his cabin. I've ordered better paper, but how can I make pretty rich browns? I always end up with mud. I would love to know a better quality yet affordable paint I can get and what colors to use. Thank you so very much. You always encourage me to try new things and push the boundaries.
I would recommend maybe working in glazes. So you do your wash, and then you put maybe your first coat on the barn, and then you can go in with some more shadows. Building up transparent levels of color will really give you a rich look, and the paints you already have might be just fine for that. But I mean, like I said before, these Turner paints are really nice, and they're not very expensive. But I mean, even with like a Cotman, I think, or as long as it's a decent paint and it's transparent, you can build up those layers and get that look. What I did here was I just took a little bit of the yellow ochre and just kind of blended it next to the highlight areas of these buds. And to make my shadow, I'm going to use ultramarine blue, which is the same blue we've been using, and the red. I'm just going to find a fresh place to mix here. I think I'll mix it over here.
Palette's pretty full.
It is. And that's the only thing about this palette is that it fits in my desk great, but I do lose a little of the space. Oops, I just flung some of that over there.
Desi loves ya. Hey Lindsay, I'm having trouble on how much water to use on the wash. Do you have any tips? Thanks.
Shiny. Your paper should be shiny. That was probably I'm going to add a little brown to that to kind of gray up my blue. I don't want this to be real purple. I want it to be kind of like a deep burgundy color. And that's going into my shadow areas on the rosebuds.
Patsy Mesa, do you have to draw the picture first or can you freehand your painting?
Yeah, you can freehand it. It does help a little bit to have that planning done, but you don't have to. You'll get a looser look probably if you don't freehand it. I just find with watercolor it does require a little more planning because you do have to reserve some white areas. Like if you painted a background that was really vivid, you might not be able to get back to a color that you can. You might not be able to paint that light rose over it if you've got like a really dark background, and if you didn't paint it with a color that lifts very well. So it just requires a little forethought, and to have it sketched on first does help, just because then you can kind of, I can avoid putting green right there. I can put the colors down where they're gonna end up.
Christine Firks, what kind of drawings should a starter in watercolor experiment with?
Draw whatever you like to draw. I like to draw flowers, but if you don't like to draw flowers, draw buildings, draw landscapes, draw animals, draw butterflies or birds. Really whatever you're drawn to, you should draw. Just did the sap green in that leaf there. Now I'm dabbing in some yellow ochre in the highlight area, and I'm going to grab a little ultramarine blue to make a shadow. Ultramarine blue and sap green. That's a great shadow color for that leaf. And I'm tapping my brush at the edges here to give it that kind of pinked, like rough edge that these rose leaves have. And then I'm going to grab my scraper and scrape in the veins while it's wet, and it will save me some time down the road by doing this now.
Kate, hello, it's 3 a.m. in Sydney. How do you avoid muddiness of colors when wet?
Well, you have quite a bit of control. Like when I wet the background, I put this blue over here where I want my window. I put the green over here where I wanted the reflections through the glass. I just kind of tried to keep them a little bit separate on my palette. And then, your paint's only going to travel where your paper's wet. So as you go over with your more layers, just don't wet the areas that you don't want to mix. And also kind of keeping your colors fresh and letting them mix a little bit on the paper rather than mixing everything on the palette will keep them a little fresher as well.
Lucky Issy, what is the best way to support your channel other than sponsor links?
Well, my channel personally, you could... If you're wondering how you could support my channel, I will have some classes available for purchase in the future. But, all I want you guys to do is watch and have fun. some like supporting sponsors is a great way if you need what they're selling, but I never want anyone to go and buy something just because, you know, they think I'm going to earn money from it. I don't want that. I don't want anyone to put their budget in jeopardy because, you know, they think that they're helping me out. But I will have some classes for purchase coming up in the future. But don't worry about it. You're supporting me right now by being here, by hanging out, by sending your positive vibes and energy. That is supporting me, and that's more than I can ask for.
Lizette Diaz. I was just about to purchase masking fluid. Thank you, Lindsay. Dante is from Romania. Your art is amazing.
Thank you. Oh, I will say, if you are going to purchase masking fluid, if you decide you still want some, I have a bottle I've been using, Winsor & Newton brand, for like 15 years. As long as you recap it, it lasts really well. And I've had other brands that have just kind of chunked up over time. So just keep that. If you do want to buy some, I recommend Winsor & Newton. And what I do is I get a little container, like an old film canister, and I'll put like a little bit out in it and leave my main jar capped up. I don't use it all that often, but it's nice to know that it hasn't all, you know, been ruined since going into disuse.
Yeah, because sometimes you buy stuff and if you don't use it all the time, it just goes bad and then you have to throw it out. It's like makeup.
Yeah.
You can't get a whole lot of things in like the sampler sizes, which is what I need for some stuff because I don't wear a ton of makeup, so you're forced to buy the big bottle and then it goes bad before you use it all up. It's like throwing money in the trash can.
Yes.
And that is not what the Frugal Crafter community is about.
No, absolutely not.
Let's see. Olga Mark Allen, question: Reeves watercolor tubes. Any comments on the quality?
Those are actually a good value, I think. I've tried the watercolors and the gouache, and actually they're water mixable oils. They're low price, but I think they have a really good quality, and I believe they're made by the same company that produces Winsor & Newton. And I don't know how I kind of got that insider information from a shop owner. So, you know, I don't have any other confirmation than that, but I've always been happy. Their watercolor pencils are decent, and you can't beat the price, and they're non-toxic, so you can feel good about letting the kids use it. They're probably going to fade. You know, the stuff that you make with it might fade, but if you just want the joy of painting, they're going to perform well for you. And that said, I'm trying to think if anything I've painted with Reeves has faded. I can't recall because I haven't used them in a while, but they're a really great option, especially for kids. You don't have to worry about them wasting the paint. You don't have to worry about them getting sick from it either.
Milagro Nieves, how do you preserve your watercolor so the painting lasts forever?
Well, you've got to use good quality paint and paper. Paint more than anything, and acid-free watercolor paper. If you're really worried about longevity, probably not displaying them, putting it in a portfolio away from light. But, you know, if you can use a UV glass or plexiglass to protect it from light damage. I have some hanging in my living room that gets quite a bit of sun. They were painted with the M. Graham paints, and they're still as bright as when I painted them. So, you know, framing them, matting them, putting them under glass. A mat's important because it's a work on paper. Otherwise, it could stick, like if there's any condensation or humidity. But yeah, framing under glass or keeping it safe in a portfolio, just using light fast pigments. When you buy your paint, there's generally like, if not on the package, on the tube, if you're buying individual paints, it'll tell you how light fast something is. And light fast just basically means how long it'll last in typical, maybe museum conditions, but like, you know, not obviously leaving it out on your deck in the sun and the rain.
Sunroom.
Yeah, in the sunroom, yeah. Just under, you know, reasonable circumstances how long it's going to last. So, you know, look for a paint with good light fast ratings. Now, even in good quality paint, some colors are fugitive, meaning they'll fade. So you just want to watch out for that. Make sure you get a permanent color if you're going to do it for something that needs to last for a while.
Retha Off-Grid, the photo we're using, is saying,
hi, Retha.
Says hello and thanks for using my photo.
Thank you for sharing such a beautiful photo. I saw this and I was like, whoa, this is gorgeous. And I'm like, that's going to be done in watercolor. I can't wait to paint that.
It is a great photo.
It reminds me, because I love this, is like a jar of mason, and I always think kind of, what's the story behind the photo? And for me, and I have no idea, maybe she'll chime in and tell us what the story behind this photo is, but like, I think of it as like, okay, you know, because one of my goals in life is to have a camp or a house on the water somewhere, and I just picture, you know, this is they've been building their camp, and the husband, they've been working hard on it, and you know, you still get the wooden walls, and it's just kind of rustic still, and you know, husband comes home and surprises his wife with a bouquet of roses. Of course, they have no vases because they're in this rustic camp, so she just grabs a spaghetti sauce jar and plops them in there. So that's my story behind this painting. I wonder what the real story is. It'd be funny if that was the story. And I just love when these colors blend together. Now purple and yellow will make kind of a brown, but like right there, they're kind of resisting each other. So you've got that pretty little bloom growing there, and it's just kind of fun. When I see something like that happen, I leave it and I just let the paint do what it wants to do. And we get another little blossom hiding over here that I want to paint in. It's going to be a little darker than the shadow color, which is just the ultramarine burnt sienna, ultramarine red and a little bit of the burnt sienna. Did you have a question?
Yes, a couple of them.
Oh,
I got behind again. We have 257 people watching.
Woo,
and we have
awesome.
active chatting going on. It's fantastic. So I'm a little behind on the questions.
That's great, though.
But several of our regulars are helping field some of the other questions. So you know they're doing a great job helping me out.
Awesome.
I need 3 of me to do, or 4 of me to run the chat. Anyway, Melissa Aldasari. Do M. Graham watercolor paints come in pans?
I don't think they do, but they have honey in them, and when you put them in your palette, they will stay semi-moist. Now, the downside to that is if you're going to travel with it, you want to make sure you're traveling with that palette flat, because if you keep it on its side for a while, those colors can migrate. So just be careful about that. Yeah. So make your own. And in fact, I rarely buy pans when like a set runs out. I'll just refill it with the tubes I have, or I'll buy tubes from that same company if I really like the color. Because more people buy tubes; they're more readily available, and I think that kind of keeps the price down on them. Because you know, when a company can sell a lot of something, they can make the price lower.
And let's see. Oh, Elizabeth Kilbride. Do you ever use gouache with your watercolor pieces?
I usually don't, unless I make an error and I can't fix it with a transparent paint.
Sydney Doe, how do you feel about graphene watercolor pencils from Jerry's for beginners?
I haven't used the graphene, so I don't know. If anybody there has used them, please chime in the comments. I'm wetting the area around the jar on kind of the windowsill, so I can put in some shadow colors. I think I've heard they're decent, but I haven't used them myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to recommend something that I...
Well, again, I'm behind, so someone else in the chat may have used and answered. I
do know that the Soho brand of pencils from Jerry's are made by Create-A-Color, which is a big, well-respected pencil brand. I don't know if they have watercolor in the Soho line, though. They have regular, traditional colored pencils. I'll be reviewing those soon. I just got a set to try with some adult coloring books.
Love the adult coloring books.
Me too. I need a little stress reliever after this week. This week's been not so hot.
Scott Crow, love your tutorials, can't get enough. Are there any other online artists you would recommend to follow to do their tutorials?
Oh, well, one of them is right here in the room today, Cinnamon Cooney, the art Sherpa, if you like acrylics. There is none finer than Cinnamon. And she's got some fun. She does a lot of live. She does all live now, but of course, they're all available for replay, so check them out. Mind of Watercolor. If you like watercolor tutorials, Steve Mitchell over at the Mind of Watercolor is an excellent resource. Marty Owens is great for product reviews.
And he reviews everything, right?
Holy cow, he has reviewed it. Honestly, people ask me, I'm like, you know what, just go to Marty's channel. I think he has it. Because,
And if he does, he probably will.
Yeah, and see, I'm kind of lazy. And I'm not, painting out all my paints and sitting them in the windowsill and checking them every 3 days to see if they, I'm just... Nobody got time for that.
Nobody got time for that. Nobody.
I don't know, because he has a real job, so I don't know how he does it. But yeah, I recommend him. There was a YouTuber, and he hasn't posted anything in forever, but he has a few tutorials in his archive, and it's called Realistic Art. And Ross Barber is his name, and he is very talented watercolorist. Does watercolor jewelry too, which is really fun. He doesn't have too many videos, and he hasn't posted in a while, but it's definitely worth checking out in the archives. Just because a video's been posted a couple years ago doesn't make it bad, doesn't make it not worth watching. I think people kind of feel like that on YouTube, that if it wasn't posted in the last, couple weeks, then it's not worth watching.
It's trash, it's old.
Yeah. It's like, guess what, guys? These techniques have not changed that much over the last couple hundred years.
Leanna Marcel, what would be a great beginner set to buy in a mixed media acrylic painter and would like to try it? She or he are in the UK. So maybe if we have other people from the UK in the chat today, they could make some recommendations. Some stuff that you guys get in the UK, we can't get here in the US and vice versa.
Right.
And we're not familiar with some of the products and brands that are carried in the UK. So we may not have the best answer.
Now, did she say she was mixed media looking for watercolor?
She's a mixed media acrylic painter.
Okay. Was she looking to expand into watercolor or stay with acrylics?
Just a great beginner set to buy. So I'm assuming watercolor.
Okay.
Doesn't say.
Because in mixed media, you might want some different abilities. You might want your paint to perform differently. And I'm actually working on a class right now, and the set that I'm using, because it's a mixed media class, the set I'm using is actually not one I like to watercolor with, but I really like its properties for mixed media, and it's the Ganze Tambe. I'm using the 24 set, but they have as many as 36 sets, and it's kind of marketed to crafters. Rubber stampers are really loving it, and it's the texture of the paint is a little creamier, so you can actually go on top of watercolor crayons, and it will stick. Whereas regular watercolors would kind of bead up. It just has different properties that I really like for mixed media, but you can thin it down and do more watercolory techniques if you want to, so that's kind of fun. And it's not crazy expensive, and it might be something because it's a Japanese company, and we get it in the United States. There might be something that, like on Amazon UK or maybe directly from Kuretake Zig, you can get it fairly inexpensively. That's something I would check out. Since you said you're a mixed media painter, I think you might get a little more versatility out of that, because you can layer it over other things. Watercolor can be hard to layer over. It's great as an underpainting, but layering over can be tricky. So that would be my pick there. Otherwise, there are any brand name watercolor paints. Schminke is from Germany. I haven't used them, but Marty had a great review on those. I just got the Lucas ones, and I think they're available overseas. I really like these, but I don't know. I think Jerry's has a freight forwarding service. You can call the customer service and ask about that. See if it's economical to do that. Sometimes it's not. If you have to get anything shipped, what you save on the materials might be eaten up on. Yeah, I'm adding a little bit of yellow ochre right to this edge. Now, I'm not bothered by the fact that I wet this area and some of the color pulled out. I like that, but
if you could slide it down a little bit. Oh, you did okay. I forget I'm a few seconds behind. Never mind. Cancel that. I interrupted. Sorry, you're pulling yellow ochre.
Yep. I'm thinking the sun's coming through this window, and it would light up this inside of the window casing here. So I just want to get that warmth in there. So right there, I put it on dry paper. So what I'll do is, I want a little bit down here, I think. I'm going to wet my brush, and I'll just float color next to it and let it wick across.
Christine Ferks, how should a beginner start drawing with color? Drawing with color. Like I wonder if she means like using colored pencils or... She doesn't say.
I would say, could you like hop back in there and ask me what media? Because I think just hop right in and try whatever media you want. You know, start with a good drawing. The drawing is the hard part, I think. You know, get that in, and then and I actually recommend drawing it on tracing paper so you can transfer it another time if you need to. Like if you don't get it on your first try, you still have your drawing to use again. I'm using that mix of the blue and burnt sienna to add some shadows in the jar. I'm just skipping around to dry parts of the painting. There's no real reason I'm going to this one versus somewhere else. It's just this is dry, so I'm going in to work on this now. I want to get the water line in there.
Judy Parks. Hi, Lindsay from Texas.
Hi, Judy.
When building your layers, do you use less and less water? I painted my first painting the other night, and my detail was not like I thought it would turn out.
Yes, less water as you go. And working on dry paper as you go. At least as I go, I start to work on more dry paper because I don't want my colors to bleed. I might paint something on dry paper and then float it out with some water. Because, I mean, really, all you have to do is suggest, you know, the shapes and the colors. Just kind of tap, wet it a little bit, soften your edges here and there. You don't want to overdo it. Your brain will fill in the rest of whatever's not, it's not quite perfect.
Noah Murphy, last question. It's a weird one. I always have quirks like putting my brush in my hair clip if I need another free hand. I know Noah is a boy's name, but I'm a girl with shoulder-length hair. Thanks, Mom. Do you find yourself doing any quirky things while painting?
Let me think. I tend to just lose track of time, I think is my big thing.
I talk to myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm talking myself through a step or whatever, if I'm working on something. Sometimes the dog looks at me like, what?
Yep.
Sorry, Chewy. Gavi S. Does opacity of a watercolor set indicate the quality of the paint, or is it more about preference, whether you like it more transparent or not?
Well, if it's set out and marketed as a transparent watercolor and it's opaque, then yeah, that means there's probably some cheap fillers put into it. But some paints are opaque and some are not. Like for instance, I just received 2 paint sets, and I'm going to show you one of them here because I got one handy. The other one's down cellar. But so these Grumbacher Deluxe watercolors, and they really took liberty with the word deluxe. I'll tell you that right now. But so this is the opaque set. The opaque set was beautiful. The colors were rich and vivid, and I liked it. And I didn't expect to because the transparent set was horrible. So some pigments are opaque and some aren't, and they're going to use different pigments depending on what they're trying to do. But if you have bought transparent watercolors and they're looking opaque, then they're not a very good quality paint. But other than that, yes, it's preference. It should tell you whether they're opaque or not, so you can make the choice whether you want opaque paints or you want transparent paints. All right, now we're going to work on the flower, and I'm going to go back in with some more shadow, and I'm using the mix here on my palette, which is just the quinacridone and yellow ochre. And I kind of look at that. You twist your paint on there, you're brushing the paint, and you're going to get a nice, fully loaded, sharp brush. Okay, so, and this will be enough paint to do a lot. And in fact, I kind of want to turn it so I don't lay my hand in the damp paper. I think maybe if I just lift it up like that, I can keep my arm out of where I want it to be. And I'm just reinforcing any of my shadows, like underneath where a flower petal's turning. You can leave any like white sparkles, you can leave them or you can cover them up. That's your choice. I think a lot of times they kind of contribute to that nice fresh look that we think of when we think of watercolor. So I often like to leave them, but if that looks too sloppy for you, then you can take them out. It's your choice, your painting. I don't think that loose means sloppy necessarily, but I know some people really have a hard time with it and they don't like the look of it. So, and some people like the look of it, but they just have a hard time just leaving it alone.
Kayla Color, how do you mix darker shades closer to the range of black?
You want to go with opposites and vibrant opposites as opposed to opaque opposites. So if I want like a brown, if I went with yellow and purple, I'd get a brown because those are both less vibrant colors. If I want a vibrant black, I could use like an emerald green and a crimson red, and I would get a really nice blacky black, because those are both very vibrant colors. So look at like using more opaque pigments will give you more muddy colors. Using more transparent pigments will give you more bright colors. And like yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, those are more opaque pigments. They're made from iron. They're gonna have larger pigment particles. Not that they have cheap fillers in them to make them opaque. They just have larger pigment particles, and so they tend to sit on top of the paper and stop the light from bouncing off the white of the paper and coming back to your eye. That's why they're more opaque. So by avoiding those colors when you're mixing dark neutrals, you'll get much more rich, deep colors.
Retha Off-Grid, how do you do glass in watercolor? Torturously, slowly, torturously, and it doesn't come out right.
Oh my gosh, are you still upset about the glass?
No, I'm not upset anymore, but boy, it scarred me.
Generally, you build up glazes of transparent color. He's crying involved. Jeez.
Lindsay's like, get over it, Sarah, get over it.
It was like 3 months ago.
I know, it's because I was reorganizing. I found that terrible painting.
Mail it. Well, it was done on a greeting card. Mail it to somebody.
Oh, I couldn't do that. I don't have that many enemies.
I just added a little watery yellow ochre to warm up that flower. I'm not sure if you can tell with the glare because it's not dry yet. I just kind of blotted a couple. I can also add a little more shadow and texture. Highlight and texture by tapping it with a towel there, and you can see some of the highlights. It'll show up more as it dries. And I'm going to go and add some shadows onto the rosebud and get those other couple petals there. Pretty much everything I'm doing here is with a number 8 round. And this is the Mimic Squirrel, so it is a synthetic brush that's meant to act and look like a squirrel brush. And those are from our sponsor, jerrysartorama.com. I'm really enjoying these. The only caution I would give is to beginners that aren't used to having a brush that is so juicy, because sometimes you get too much water. If you're a beginner, you don't really, you might not have gauged how much water to have yet, so it can make your paints a little weaker looking if you get more water than you're intending. So just keep that in mind.
Kelly Tanner, what is a good method to teach people watercolor painting?
Well, there's so many techniques, and everybody's different. So I would teach the techniques and let your students give them all the information. They can decide what they want to use. You know, if they're more into control, they might not like the wet and wet washes. But it's important to know that technique so that you can get those loose blended backgrounds. I think, I would just show them how you paint, show them the different options, and there's a great book, and I don't know if it's still in print, but your library might have it. It's called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Watercolor, and it's a big reference book. It's yellow. I have a paperback version of it, but that is an excellent book if you're looking for a great reference material. I feel like that's a little too blue, those shadows, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of red and just add it on top and let it mix in. And see, you can adjust. You're not just stuck when you put something down on your paper with watercolor. And I think that's what a lot of people think, that if they make a mistake, then it's there permanently. And that's not the case. And we've only used about 5 colors, I think. So, again, limited palette. You don't have to have every color out there. These paint companies make 120 colors. That's crazy,
That is crazy.
You can get so lost in the tools that they become trappings and not tools. That should not happen. Your watercolor, it should, the paints that you buy should help you, not confuse you. And sticking with a limited palette often makes your paintings look so much better. Alright, we're going to work on bringing some of those flowers, kind of separating the petals a little bit. I've got a little sap green, ultramarine, and I picked up a little bit of that red. It was still on my brush, so we're gonna have a nice neutral because we got the red and the green there, plus some of the blue. And I'm just gonna kind of paint around some of these. So I'm painting around that leaf in the front there to help separate it. And I'm just gonna drag out some grasses, which aren't in the photo, but I'm putting them in there because I think they help the design.
Because you can.
I can. It's my painting. You can do whatever you like on your painting. And if I get a little too much dark, what I'll do is rinse my brush, grab a little of the sap green, float it right next to it, and let it blend in. Anytime it seems a little dark, you go and just add a little sap green next to it, let it mix. A little yellow ochre in there. I love yellow ochre. I feel like yellow ochre is one of those colors that sweetens other colors. If you've got your colors too vibrant, a little yellow ochre will help tone it down a little bit. It's like a magic color. Such a wonderful neutral. Now, something I want to show you. Now, these brushes, this is another line of brushes I really like. This is called the Aqualon. And I like it for beginners because it's a nylon brush and it's really hard to get too much water. It has a nice snap, and actually these brushes can be used with acrylics, but I generally like them for watercolors. What I also like is the Aquarelle handle, which are these clear handles, and they have a beveled edge. So what you can do here with this is you can actually scrape lines. You can, if you scrape hard, you'll actually push the pigment around and you'll leave some lighter stems. So if you've ever wondered why you have some brushes that are like that, that's for scraping, kind of like what we do with a credit card scraper, except since it is a little bit less sharp, it will push the pigment away and give you some lighter lines, which is kind of nice for things like this, or tree trunks. Like if you're doing like trees in the distance and you have birch trees or whatever, it'll give you that cool, it'll push the pigment around and give you that really neat lighter look. And then use it on the side, you can get a darker look. It's just very versatile. And it's nice to have at least one brush in your arsenal that's got an Aquarelle handle like that. And these are the Royal Nickel Aqualons. You can find those at Jerry's or any art supplier. They are a pretty big brand. So there's a recommendation for a beginner. That's usually what I recommend a beginner starts with. And then eventually get a few of the synthetic, like the squirrels here, or the synthetic, I can't talk today, synthetic Kalinskis, because they will hold so much water, and then you'll find as you get more experience and you're not so afraid of the wet juicy paint that these are very useful. Do you have any questions coming through?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get caught up. I got behind again, trying to find where I was.
It's a big mug of coffee type of day.
It is? Yes.
Yeah. Alright, so I want my shadows, the reflections on the wall, to be really vibrant. So what I'm doing is throwing in some water. And we're going to do some loose shadows here. If you don't like this, well, you might want to, if you're painting along, you might want to watch me do this, see if you like it. And if you like it, then do it. If you don't like it, you can do your shadows another way. Okay, I don't want anyone to be like, oh, I loved it until that point, now I just ruined my painting, and I'm never going to watch Lindsay again because she's horrible.
No, you're not horrible.
And I'm going to switch over to that really juicy brush. The squirrel brushes are juicier than the faux Kalinskis. So just in case you're trying to choose between the two, these are going to hold more water. They're going to have a little less snap, just in case you're trying to pick what kind you want. You maybe want to get a value pack instead of buying a few individuals. That is what I would recommend. Make that a little juicier. A little more water. I love that my palette can all be in view. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I actually could scoot that over a little bit more. Hopefully I won't get paint on the camera. Let's add a little yellow ochre in there where I want that glow of color.
Gracie Shack 1. Hi, Lindsay.
Hey,
what
Grace.
advice would you give to a beginner art for tutorials? You're awesome.
Thank you. What advice would I give to... Oh, no, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, but I think she's starting her own YouTube channel. So, Gracie, I wish you all the best with that. I would say you need to do, if you're going to do a tutorial for somebody, do something you're really passionate about, because it's your enthusiasm and your excitement that's going to make people interested in what you're doing. You know, watching somebody that's excited about baking a cake, even I'm not interested about cooking, but if I see somebody that's really excited about baking a cake, I'm going to watch that and enjoy it. Even though there's probably not a chance in you know where that I'm going to bake that cake, I'll enjoy watching it because somebody is enthusiastic and really loves what they're doing, because that's what people want to see. Because not everybody is going to do the tutorial you do. Some just want to hang out. They just want to see somebody else having a good time. Maybe they're curious about how something was made, but they don't actually have a desire to make it. As long as you're having a good time, they're going to have a good time, and they're going to want to watch people having a good time. I feel like I want my shadows a little brighter in this version than I had in my other one, so I went right in with that purple that I made with the red and the blue that I've been using. I'm adding some of that in too. I'm going to add a little burnt sienna though, because that is a little vivid. That's a little too vivid for this. Oh, I want more of that purple down here though.
Beverly Mossman, how is your weather in Maine? Well, right now it's spitting snow, and theoretically this weekend we should be getting lots of snow Sunday into Monday. Which is unfortunate because a bunch of the bulbs I put in this fall at the house have started to come out. So I'm going to cover them back over with leaves and hope they don't die.
Yeah, it's we had such an early spring that it's very unusual for us to have such an early spring, and now it's back to winter again.
Well, yeah, but you know, the upside, the weather's supposed to boost back up into the 40s, so it's not going to stick around.
Right.
Let's see. Jane Kirkwood. Hiya, I've been struggling to get realistic looking water/sea using watercolors. Could you suggest a tip, please? Thanks.
Well, like if I'm doing, that's actually a place where you might want to use masking fluid, because like you could flick on masking fluid like a fan brush and get the sea spray, do it before you paint, kind of sketch it out so you know where you're intending your stuff to go, and then paint over that, and then you can have a really realistic looking like waves and stuff. That would be one thing. Sometimes I'll use wax and paint waves in with wax, kind of scribble them on with wax before I do my painting, and then you get those natural kind of resist waves. You'll see like the snaky waves in the water. That's a great way to do that. Using salt, like if you've painted like a large wash and it just is too flat while it's still wet, throw in some salt, and that will give you just some kind of granulation that can mimic, just kind of broken up rocks and sea and water. Those would be my tips. Make sure your horizon line is nice and level, because that's a quick way to throw off a seascape. And make sure that if you have any rocks or islands or anything in the far distance, that you have them hazier, meaning like more grayed out, less vibrant, more cooler in color, and that will help with your perspective. So hopefully those tips help.
Gracie Shack 1, do you have any favorite artists? You're my favorite artist, and I also like Monet.
Oh, boy, I really like Marc Chagall. I like Kandinsky. I like Moreau. I tend to like more abstract painters, abstract expressionists. It looks really joyful and free. That's what I like to see in art. All right, we're coming up on the detail layers real soon here. Just drying everything up so I can get in and lift out some highlights. I'm going to work on the jar first. I think that the jar is dry enough and the other stuff can air dry. Now I'm actually going to switch over and grab a little more durable brush here. This is a Simply Simmons. It is a number 8 bright. Anything that's fairly stiff. This is really too stiff for watercolors, but for what I'm going to use it for, it's perfect. I'm going to lift out some of the highlights on this jar. And this mason jar is one of those ones that's kind of a little squared off. So what I'm going to do is, with my water, go straight up and down in this area here. And what it's doing here is it's lifting off, it's kind of reconstituting that watercolor. Because watercolor, if you add water to it, it wants to lift. So I'm doing that on purpose. And since I'm using a brush that's stiffer than what you typically would use for watercolor, I can actually remove quite a bit of it. So I want to do this before I put my shadows on, so I'll have a little more contrast. Hopefully my arm's not in the way. I just want to get that bright chisel edge right on the threads of the jar.
Nikki D, what would I do if the watercolor tore my paper and my painting was ruined?
Well, there's a couple things you can do. It sounds like your paper's pilled up. There's a product called Absorbent Ground, and you can use that to patch your paper. You can also use that if you've completely obliterated the white and you need to bring back that white paper. I know Daniel Smith makes it. I think Core makes it. There's, just Google watercolor ground. Go to Jerry's or your favorite store and Google watercolor ground, and it should come up. And so it's kind of like a gesso, but it's meant for watercolor paint to stick to. There's also something called Aqua Cover, I believe, and I think that's by Creative Mark. It's either by Creative Mark or Richardson Art Products, but Jerry sells it anyway. It's like a whiteout for your paper, so you could go and patch that way. So you could look at both of those options and see which one meets your needs, see which one you think you will use more. I know that the Aqua Cover, I believe it's called Aqua Cover, you buy whatever brand of paper you typically use, so because all papers are slightly different in color, so you can just choose the one that's closest to the brand that you use. Absorbent ground, I think, just kind of comes in one color. Okay, so I've lifted off my highlights there. Maybe one more on the hip of that, the shoulder of that vase. This is a little rough on the brushes, I will not lie. You can use like a hog brush too, which would be a little more resilient. I don't do acrylics that much, so I'm kind of bad to my brushes. Hopefully Cinnamon's not still here. She's probably cursing at me.
No, she's still here. No, she's helping. She and Kim Sim are helping me keep questions.
Oh,
I'm behind.
Thanks, guys.
We got 260 people watching, and yeah, whew, people are chatting and questioning. It's awesome.
This is so awesome. This is just what I needed today. You guys are making my day. You have no idea the week that I've had, and you guys are totally...
You have had a, pardon my language, I'm going to use the S word if anybody's going to get offended, a shitty week, shall we say. Sorry, I've been the cursing today.
Yeah. Yeah, so this has, hopefully there's no children watching. This has been a...
yeah, sorry if there are.
Well, you warned them, hopefully.
I did. I gave them a heads up.
Hopefully, ears were covered.
And it wasn't a terribly bad word.
There are worse words. Let's not go over them.
No. The 7 words you can't say on TV.
Yeah.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay, let's see. Getting back up.
Okay, I'm going to put some shadows in the jar. I'm actually going to hit that jar again with the... heat tool just to dry it, just to make sure, because I don't want to have any rough edges when I go in to put my shadows. Alright, and I am going to use ultramarine blue and sap green. And this is going to give me a really great dark. And I'm going in between the threads. Oh, I got a bead of water. When you get that bead of water, you want to wipe that right off your ferrule because it'll drip down and then you'll be able to control, the dreaded bead. You won't be able to control what's going on.
Bead. Alright, I'm just going to skip a little towards the bottom. So I apologize if I miss anybody's questions. I can't find where I was before. Oh, good. The snow won't hurt my bulbs. I've had a couple people tell me.
Good.
I'm still going to put the leaves over them. I'm still getting used to bulbing and planting things outside. Figure if I can keep houseplants alive.
Oh, you won't have a problem. You seem to have a green thumb.
Hopefully, yeah. I don't know. Although ivy, like regular ivy that's supposed to be indestructible, I kill. I either let it get too dry or I overwater it. Whew.
I think ivy's hard because I think it's really easy to rot those leaves. I
don't know. I give it up.
The orchid's the only thing I'm able to keep alive. But that's the only, if I can focus on one plant, I'm good. I couldn't keep the care schedules of all the plants, in my head. I can keep that one orchid alive, and that's my claim to gardening fame. If you wanted a brighter highlight on this vase, you could actually go in with a white colored pencil or white paint if you want to. I really don't think it's necessary, but if you feel like you want it a little bit brighter, go ahead and do it. It's your painting. It might keep you out of a watercolor competition, a traditional watercolor competition, but if you're not putting it in a competition, you just want the bright white highlight, go for it.
Lynn B, how do you know what colors to use for shadows and how dark to make the shadows?
I look at what the thing is that's being shadowed. So if I was like painting a shadow on an orange, I wouldn't want to paint it gray or brown. I would take orange and add blue to it, and I would use those colors overlaying on each other to make a natural looking shadow. So I usually look at the color and take its opposite, or I look at what's around it. Like if I had two shiny things next to each other, they're going to reflect each other's colors, so I need to put the colors of each of the items in the shadow. So it just depends on the object itself and its surroundings and what I've been using. I don't take new colors for shadows because they never look natural. You want to use colors you've been using. Like this black here. This is not black. It's burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I've used these colors throughout the picture, so that's what I'm going to use for this really light shadow under the vase.
Esgilova, this is not about the subject, but I just want to ask, do you have a favorite book? If there is, what is it? I'm from Turkey, and I love you.
Oh, thank you. My favorite book is The Night Circus.
It's a great book. Mom hated that book. She said she couldn't get through it.
Oh, I loved it.
She gave me her copy. She's like, do you want this? I don't even care about it. I was like, sure. So I got a free copy for Mom. She couldn't finish it. She did not like it. She's like, I don't get it.
I also like, and it's being made into a movie, Miss Peregrine's School.
I heard Tim Burton's doing it.
Yes, that's good. That's perfect. What a perfect choice for a director.
I have the second book. I just haven't read it yet. And there's a third book out now.
Oh, really? I've been on the waiting list for the second book at the library.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
I have it if you want to borrow it. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's in the midst of stacks of my other books that I'm trying to read.
Yeah. Oh, so well, speaking of reading, and I've got to download some stuff on my Kindle because I am going to be traveling in a week and a half. So next week we'll have a live show. The week after we will not, though.
Oh, I better jot that down.
Yeah. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking for pastel and acrylic, but overwhelmingly watercolor has been what's been requested. So I think after I get back from my my trip, I am going to start doing like maybe a Tuesday live show or something so I can get some of those other mediums covered in that longer format. And it would be a little different. I'd probably do like Q&A at the end just because I'd probably be doing that as I had time kind of solo. So that way I could get your questions about the topic at the end. And hopefully that would be something you guys are interested in. You can let me know in the comments or in the chat. Comments after the video would be really great because then I can actually go in and see them.
Especially if I missed your question earlier.
Yes, go ahead and add them in after.
Gracie Shack, what advice would you choose? Which paintings to go in your portfolio?
I would choose paintings that are complete originals, like that you didn't follow somebody else's tutorial for. Like maybe go out and paint outdoors. Just make sure it's really original so somebody's not going to see that same work elsewhere. I was putting in some marks to show there's lines and writing on the jar here. And work you're really proud of. It should, you've only got a few seconds for somebody to look at your portfolio. You want to make sure that it's the best and it's going to catch their attention. I'm putting in there just a few stronger darks and shadows here. And we'll be finishing this right up. Now if you want to lighten any of the parts of the rose up, and mine got a little dark, you want to do the same thing we did with the jar. We're going to take the brush, the firm acrylic brush, and we're just going to scrub back and forth. Now this is a quinacridone color, this pink, so it's a staining color. It's not going to lift up as easily as an earth tone or a burnt sienna or an ultramarine blue, but we can lighten it up a bit so we can get a shadow, and that's really all we need to do. So just to let you know, kind of troubleshooting there, if you ended up getting too much pigment anywhere, just scrub it back and forth and blot. And there, I like that. Let's give it just a little bit more of a highlight. My brush, this long-handled brush, because that's how you can tell it's an easel brush. It's got a long handle. It keeps hitting my cord that hooks my camera to my computer. And I want a little bit of a highlight up there, so I'm doing the same thing. And you never want to rub with a paper towel. You always just want to press straight down and lift up. If you rub, you could smear your paint, and you can also damage the paper and it could pill up on you, and then that's when your paper tends to rip when you're painting, and it's just not pleasant. A little more highlight over here.
Chewy. Hello.
And this is kind of like what we call a subtractive technique because we're taking paint out. I bet the new microphone is picking up the pitter-patter of
Yes,
feet.
someone was asking earlier if it was Hazel in the background, and then I said, no, it's Chewy today. Hazel's snoozing on the couch. Napping. Napping, Chewy. I know you want to go out and chase the chickens. That's what Chewy wants to do. But the chickens are in their coop. Chickens are in their coop.
And I'm just kind of actually doing this technique. I'm picking up some of this yellow ochre with that acrylic brush so I can kind of do both, add some yellow and also lift out some little highlights here and there. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. And I had some really interesting spatters over here in the other one, and I think I want to replicate that. And I'll show you here. And then we'll have it all wrapped up. I liked what was happening over here, so I'm going to try to replicate that in this one, because I feel like I still want a little bit stronger of a shadow there. So I'm just going to actually flick on some water. So when I paint it, I'll get some unusual flowing of color. Do a little bit over here too, because I feel like I just want to loosen things up and get a little more color in there. And ultramarine blue, that's got a little in the kind of sap green area, so it's going to pick up a little bit of that. And I'm just going to kind of get that shape of the jar in there so my shadow makes a little more sense. And a little shadow on the windowsill casing, a little window casing there. And I like to do that when I've put the flicks of water down, because different areas are going to grab some of those water droplets and then give us a really cool look when they kind of fade out. But if you don't like that, you don't have to do it. It's your painting. And just maybe a little more water there. And a little magenta down there just to balance out the design. Clean up my palette while I'm at it. Hopefully I didn't get it on the camera. I can't tell. I got so many spatters everywhere. Who knows?
I can't see any spatters.
Well, that's good. You're got a delay though. I could have spattered it and you don't even know.
That's true. I could be spattered. That's all right. I got my plaid shirt on. Nobody will notice.
And then just add any finishing touches that you want. Again, if you feel like you really want a brighter white on the jar, brighter highlight, go ahead and use a white color pencil, or like this kit of paint comes with a white and a black. I just personally don't use it unless I've gotten myself into some situation where I can't. Real jam, then I might use it rather than wasting, and throwing away the painting. But generally I don't. And then once it's dry, I would sign my name. There you have it. If you have any last minute questions, you can lay them on me. I'll show you the original there. So once it's dry, things do shift a little bit. You can see the detail a little bit more on the flower when it dries. And that's all for today. I want to thank jerry'sartorama.com for sponsoring this video. You can find all the supplies I used today at Jerry's. There are links in the video description if you're watching the replay and you want to go check that out. This replay will be up forever, so if you like it, share it with your friends. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Pinterest. That's how my channel grows. It really helps me out, and I do appreciate it. Any other last minute questions before we head out?
No, just some general chat and stuff. So.
All right. Oh, and please give me a thumbs up before you head out today. That also really helps my channel, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.